Hello everyone, my name is Orsolya, and my PhD topic in my PhD I investigate the potential neurophysiological and neuroimaging markers of schizophrenia. I'm a psychologist and I work at the Department of Psychiatry and Psychotherapy, and my vision is to understand the biological background of schizophrenia, and in order to reach that vision, my mission is to study the potential biomarkers with neurophysiological and neuroimaging methods. So here you can see my two ongoing projects, and both of them I focus on different methods, but the same goal is to understand the biological background of schizophrenia. So why here I'm going to talk about my first project, where I use transcranial magnetic stimulation combined with electromyography in schizophrenia. So why is it important to study this kind of biological mechanisms in schizophrenia? So schizophrenia is a very severe psychiatric disorder, which has a prevalence around 1%, which has been increasing in the last couple of decades. And it is a highly heterogeneous, diverse disease, so there are no two patients who are the same and who have the same kind of symptoms. And this kind of heterogeneity and the growing prevalence is not very well explained by current diagnostic methods, which in the field of psychiatry is based on observation, a diagnostic interview, and there is a lack of biological markers that we can use to have diagnostic procedures. So the goal would be to understand the pathomechanism of schizophrenia, then to support diagnosis with potential markers. One potential marker that characterizes the pathomechanism of schizophrenia is cortical excitation inhibition imbalance, and this can be measured with transcranial magnetic stimulation when it's combined with electromyography. So the aim of my first project is to study the efficacy and the clinical potential of these methods. So here you can see how these TMS-EMG paradigms look like. So basically, when a magnetic stimulation is applied over the motor cortex, it elicits a muscle response in the hand muscle that can be detected with electromyography. And depending on the strength of the stimulations or depending on the protocol we use, we can elicit excitatory and inhibitory responses. Here you can see my method. So we identified around 1,700 articles, and we ended up 36 articles that we used in our meta-analysis. And here is the result for my first outcome, which is short interval intracortical inhibition. This is a TMS-EMG paradigm of motor cortical inhibition. And this is a number that expresses the inhibitory response, or the amount of inhibitory response. And the smaller the number, the bigger the inhibitory response is. So, for example, a SICI of 80 means 20% of inhibition, whereas a SICI of 40 means 60% of inhibitory response. We studied SICI in schizophrenia patients and compared that to healthy control group, and we were interested in the group difference. Our main effect size was mean difference in this inhibitory response. And you can see that we found a clear difference between the two groups, and there is an inhibitory deficit in schizophrenia. And as you can see, my forest plot is quite homogeneous, and there is only 3 articles that didn't show this kind of reduction. We also wanted to explore the potential sources of heterogeneity. This is 2 examples of the moderator variables that we studied, but we explored many medical, demographic, and clinical and methodological variables. Here you can see the association between SICI, so the inhibitory response, and antipsychotic medication and medication dose. We did not find a significant difference. However, there is a trend-level association between medication and SICI. So as you can see on the first plot, that those patients who received antipsychotic medication had a similar inhibitory response than to healthy controls than those who weren't treated with antipsychotics. Moving on to my second outcome measure, this is cortical silent period. This is also a TMS-EMG paradigm of inhibitory response. This is a bit different than SICI. it is expressed in milliseconds, so the numbers are different. And the longer the silent period is, the bigger the inhibitory response is. Here you can see that the forest plot is not so homogeneous, so there is a great variance in the results. There are articles that found that either this period is reduced in a healthy control group, and the opposite results we detected as well. So there is no clear group difference. However, when we were looking for different moderating factors, we found also a trend level association between medication status and this cortical silent period, but we weren't able to prove that these factors explain all the sources of heterogeneity. So as a conclusion, in my first study, we found that SICI is a very reliable TMS-EMG paradigm in schizophrenia, and there is a clear deficit of this kind of inhibitory response. This supports that hypothesis that excitation-inhibition imbalance plays an important role in the pathophysiology of schizophrenia. We have some implications for practice that SICI may be used potentially to support observational diagnosis, but first we need to conduct more research to assess the specificity and sensitivity of these kind of paradigms. So my manuscript is under revision at Psychological Medicine at the moment, which is a Q1D1 journal. In my second project, I'm also going to investigate the neurobiological background of schizophrenia, but the method I'm using is resting state functional MRI. And this is very important because resting state functional MRI can be used to detect temporal connection between brain regions and the whole functional connectivity in the brain. And schizophrenia has been described to, or has been characterized with a cognitive dysmetria and the dysfunctions in the corticocerebral and thalamocortical circuits. And these play an important role in cognitive symptoms as well as positive and negative symptoms. So the main aim of this study is to assess these network abnormalities in focusing on the thalamus and the cerebellum using resting state functional magnetic resonance imaging. So the clinical question will be whether these dysfunctions in this network are reliable markers of schizophrenia, and the hypothesis is that these network dysfunctions play also an important role in the pathophysiology of schizophrenia. We're going to use seed-based functional MRI, so it's going to be a neuroimaging meta-analysis, a bit different than my first project. You can see my flowchart of selection. I started with more than 6,000 articles, and I'm at the moment I'm in the phase of full text selection because I ended up with 500 articles to screen through the full text. So here you can see the progress for my second project, and I very much thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. I have a few questions. In one of your slides, you showed data about medicated patients.
Mm-hmm.
So there the deviation was quite high, but how were they medicated? So the typical antipsychotics, atypical antipsychotics, or ECT, or...
Yeah, so we were not able to differentiate between the exact medication. We ran some analysis on clozapine and olanzapine, but we had just a very few articles, so we did not have much statistical powers. So we combined all patients who received some kind of antipsychotic medication. We also didn't control for other kind of medications such as benzodiazepines, so we know that this is not a very clear or very heterogeneous group, medicated patients, but there is a difference between those patients who received something compared to those who received nothing.
I understand, but that something can make the difference, so that's very important. Another question, does this performance depend on the actual symptoms? So if a patient has more plus symptoms or more minus symptoms, will it change the outcome?
I don't have the figures for that. We also ran some analysis on symptom severity. We did not find any association. We only find this kind of trend level relationship between medication dose and status, but not the symptom severity, which is a curious result.
Interesting. And finally, a provocative question. So if there is kind of a motor deficit in those patients, if we prescribe the patients to do fine motor tasks, will they improve?
We believe that this kind of paradigm is not... So there is a limitation in this paradigm that we assess motor cortical excitability, but we believe that this is not reduced to motor functions, but this is more about cortical excitation inhibition imbalance. So in the future, we suggest to conduct more research with transcranial magnetic stimulation combined with EEG, for example, to assess this kind of excitability in other cortical regions, because we believe it's not about the motor areas, but about the whole excitability of the cortex.
Thank you very much.
I think I've never asked you this. Is CK used in any other psychiatric disease as a biomarker, or the CSP?
Not yet as a biomarker, because we don't have biomarkers in psychiatry yet. But CK and CSP have been explored in depression, for example, and there is a different pattern in depression. So CK seems to be specific to schizophrenia, but since we haven't done specificity analysis, we cannot state that, but it seems like there is a difference in schizophrenia.
Can we use this transcranial stimulation in other parts of cortexes? Like, what if I put it over the visual cortex, over the V1, can I see linear lines or?
I don't know much about the visual cortex. I read some research that they experimented with that, but I don't know how that works especially. There is new research using TMS in other cortical regions, in the frontal cortical regions or temporal cortical regions, and they assess the outcome with EEG or fMRI, but it's a bit more tricky technically to use a clear signal and detect a clear signal, and also to put a magnetic machine into an MRI. So that's technically a bit more challenging.